to the overall development process. And you guys know, of course, how obsessed I am with that stuff, so I wanted to take a look and make a video about it. And of course, if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button, and let's get started. So the book's sorted by alphabetical order, so of course the first champion in the book is going to be one of the oldest in the game, with Annie, and she was originally designed as kind of like a lot more dark and more gritty sort of character, and kind of like with this expectations around taking this really sweet and innocent girl and turning her into some kind of like devil almost. The concept art's really fantastic, really intense, and just so dark and gritty. And although you can definitely see how it contributed to Annie's release design, I kind of wish they really explored this like darker side more in terms of her character. Next up we have Ari, and she's a character based on the Kumiho, which is a nine-tailed fox in Korean mythology who kind of like turns into this woman and then seduces and then kills the men that she seduces. So unlike Annie, who was made to take an archetype and just kind of like completely flip it around, Ari was an example of Riot taking more of like a already known archetype but then just them putting their own twist on it. And that's something that's pretty common to see overall in terms of creating champions, but it actually works pretty well, which is usually why you see it so often. Next up we have Heimerdinger. So when Riot started designing Heimerdinger, they kinda knew that he was gonna be like League's little homage to Albert Einstein almost. In his original design you can definitely tell that he's a lot more of a technological genius, but at the time in this version of his art it wasn't entirely clear whether he was like this short hairy dude or maybe a little bit something more than that. And moving forward from the initial concept is what allowed Riot to pin down what a Yordle actually was at the time. So in a way, Heimerdinger was kind of almost the foundation for all the Yordles in the game today, really. It's kind of sweet to see how one concept art ended up producing an entire species of characters that would go on to become some of the most loved, or I guess hated, champions in the game. Next up we have Vi, and we've talked a lot about Vi's history before since she was one of the original attempts to make sort of like this engineer character concept become a reality. And the core of the engineer character concept is Hextech, so League's combination of magic and technology, and it worked really well with Vi in her development. Hextech's meant to be sort of like a tool that anyone can really use to compete with some of the crazy powerful magical beings in the world of Runeterra, and it meshes really well with Vi's I don't really give a shit kind of attitude. One thing this concept art really shows us though is that this power kinda comes with a price, but overall it's a really awesome look into the world behind the game that you don't really just get while you're playing it. Next up we have Gangplank, and the concept art of him is all about his transition from being this laughable stereotypical pirate into more of an actual kind of relatable person, you know, a defined character that offers more than just the stereotypical pirate trope to the community. The rework definitely made him feel a lot more badass and a lot more realistic too, but it also managed to keep some parts of the champion that players have a pretty solid attachment to. It's important for Riot that a rework doesn't really isolate players that love the pre-rework version, so keeping those important parts is really crucial to the rework's success, and Riot pulled it off quite well with Gangplank. Nar's concept art actually started out with him looking like a tiny little Cubone-like character almost, you know, like a little creature kind of guy wearing or maybe carrying skulls. The main idea for his design was to create more of like a cute and playful sort of character that could kind of like explode into like this huge kind of monstrous guy. So Riot decided the best way to capture that was to almost make him look out of place when compared to the other Yordle champions. This gave way to the idea that he would be like this prehistoric Yordle figure from before they had evolved into more refined creatures. It's a really interesting concept because it puts Gnar in a really awesome spot as Yordle, and it kind of makes you wonder if maybe the other Yordles lost the ability to go mega as they grew more intelligent over the years. Next up we're looking at Tryndamere, who is based on a little bit more of a simpler archetype. You know, he's kind of like a fairly typical barbarian sort of character. He's got these huge muscles, big sword, got some anger issues, you know, that sort of thing. Riot likes to draw from real world inspiration quite a lot and then kind of just crank it up to the max, turn that dial up to 11, and for Tryndamere that meant taking the whole barbarian rage sort of idea and turning it into a way to survive even when you should definitely be dead. Next up in the art book is Echo, and it's a really awesome one because until his release we had all these Zaunite champions that were kind of just evil, or at least like really dark and gritty and grimy almost compared to like the rest of the champion roster. So Echo was meant to show that even though Zaun was kind of painted as like the opposite of Piltover and really gave off this sort of like bad guy kind of feel almost, there's still a lot of good and a lot of warmth and intelligence in Zaun if you just know where to look, even if it comes in the form of a playful little punk teenager. So whereas most of the champions we've talked about so far have had concept arts that kinda needed to be reiterated to bring out whatever design element Riot was aiming for, Rengar happens to be a little bit of an oddball. It's like someone kind of sat down and said, hey, we want a humanoid but like a feline character that also fills the hunter archetype. And the earliest sketches, honestly, I gotta say, just nailed it from the start. You know, he looks as ferocious as you'd expect with that crazy presence, and his gear gives you that really nice sense of intelligence that you wouldn't have expected if he was sort of just like a big line champion, and overall, it comes together quite nicely. Next up, we're looking at Jinx, whose first sketches were done by Riot Tea Time with the idea of this girl with like a really crazy, unstable mental state. And it was actually the concept art from Riot Tea Time that inspired Riot Gypsy Lore to later on create the champion. The early art pieces with Jinx captured her face in different places along the emotional spectrum, and they were huge motivators in what would later lead Riot to design the champion that would go from just hitting 0 to 100, every emotion on the scale along the way. Most of the time when they develop a champion, they kind of start with like a character's design or maybe like with an idea for the gameplay kit, and they kind of just like let that build up and really focus on that aspect of the design. But Jinx is one example of maybe the opposite, of starting with the actual character, starting with the theme. You know, they started with the crazy person and they kind of just made a kit that reflected it. And overall, it worked out extremely well. Next up, we're looking at Miss Fortune, and she's probably my personal favorite from the entire book, and her concept art is all about her rework though, with the goal of kind of keeping like her trademark sort of like sexiness almost, but also like the piracy sort of aspect, but also keeping her separate from where she still has a lot of differences to Gangplank. Miss Fortune's revamped lore kind of paints her as someone with like a reputation almost, you know, someone to be like really feared and respected, and her concept art is really awesome because it really gives you like such a clear image of her identity as sort of like this awesome pirate queen almost. And it even has like a storyboard that documents her life and kind of shows what caused her to become this fearsome character. Next up, we're looking at Singed, who is a prime example of Riot's tendencies to maybe take one defining feature of a champion and then just go ham on that one individual feature, totally just exaggerate it and make it really recognizable. And for Singed, this feature was his huge ass bottle of poison that he carries around. It's a little bit simple, but it's actually really so clever in the way that it's presented. You know, just that bottle of poison alone tells you everything you need to know about Singed's personality. You know, he makes his own poison, so he's a scientist, maybe he's a chemist, and he enjoys poisoning everyone else, so he is also a psychopath. And you get all of that information just from seeing his art pieces, really. And at the same time, Singed is also meant to be like a little bit silly, kind of nutty almost. So they stick this big bottle of poison on his back and make him administer it by running around and just leaving a trail of death behind him. It just works so well. So Sion's concept art is another champion that's looking all about his rework and really just Riot's quest to reinvent outdated champions in a way that kind of just stays true to what made them unique in the first place, but without ruining what players loved about them. Sion was originally kind of like a goofy looking sort of guy for an undead character, but that was a little bit of what the player base sort of connected with, so Riot really tried to preserve that during his redesign. Whether they succeeded or not kind of depends on who you ask, but overall he definitely looks way more badass and a lot less like a stereotypical ghoul sort of champion. But aside from his awkward mouthpiece and weird proportions, he's not really that wacky looking anymore. But the new revamp for Sion was definitely one of the more successful ones throughout League's history, and overall, man, these concept arts are just awesome. Now, most of the time, Riot definitely comes up with designs that would look cool in the game and then really just try to make gameplay that works with it. But sometimes, you know, the opposite happens quite often as well. And for Braum, his persona was created as a solution to the problem with Cece. So Cece was a character who was like a female engineer that used this huge shield to support her team, but the kit just didn't mesh that well with the character design, and so Riot fixed the problem by coming up with a whole new character and theme for the gameplay concept of Braum, you know, this stoic defender with a really warm smile from Freljord who just loves everyone. And last up, we're taking a look at Sona, and her concept art actually reveals quite a lot, that she was first imagined as like a techno genius way before she even got the DJ Sona skin. Although they decided to go a little bit more of a different direction with her lore, maybe her base skin, they wanted to pull a little bit back of that techno style with the DJ Sona. So the challenge was kind of like finding a way to do it that really didn't make it all that different from Sona overall. You know, champions still do have to be recognizable in a game even with their skins. So the solution was to take something else that no champion really has and turn it into a defining feature for Sona, kind of like they did with Singed's poison. And for Sona, that happened to be her massive pigtails. It's always really awesome to see these sort of behind the scenes kind of stuff from Riot, and these art pieces were honestly such an awesome way to deliver that information. So, you know, huge props to Riot for putting it together, and apparently this is just volume 1, which means we might actually be getting more in the future, so that's great to hear as well. Anyway, looks like that's gonna be it for me. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.